Today's story depicts violence and disturbing elements. As such, viewer discretion is advised. The man in today's video is considered by the FBI to be one of the most monstrous serial killers in America's history. What made him so dangerous, amongst other things, is that up until a certain point, he wasn't even on the authorities' radar. He was completely unknown to them. Only after they had him in an interrogation room did they feel like they truly had opened Pandora's box, and his confessions would shake the cores of even the most seasoned FBI agents. Hi folks, my name's Johnny. Welcome to the Oddest. If you enjoyed today's video, or indeed if you've watched any of my other content and would like to see more, then I humbly request that you subscribe so you don't miss any more of my stuff. So now, let's get on with it. When I was a kid, I remember proudly telling people that when I grow up, I want to live in Alaska. I would choose somewhere remote. I would say I like the idea of solitude in a wee close-knit community, one where the mayor is also the doctor and the sheriff. Today's story starts off in Alaska's largest city, the municipality of Anchorage. It's got a population of about 300,000 residents, and due to its position along the polar route, its airport is 10 hours from 90% of the industrialised world, making it perfect to stop off and refuel the old cargo planes. It's also a place that FedEx chose to be its main hub. Everything comes and goes through Anchorage. But on the cold night of February 1st, 2012, evil would show up. 18-year-old Samantha Koenig was working the solo late shift at the Common Grounds coffee stand in downtown Anchorage. It was a wee, tasteful shack that passers-by and drivers could pull over and get a nice cup of hot brew, served by the delightful and smiley Samantha, both of which would warm your wee heart before continuing on your journey. Shortly after 8 PM that night, a male customer would appear on foot at the kiosk window and calmly order a coffee. Once Samantha prepared the hot drink for the man, she would turn round, and upon putting the coffee on the shelf, she was shocked to see that the man had a gun pointed at her. He then instructed Samantha to turn off the lights, empty the cash register, which she did, and then handed the man the cash. Still at gunpoint, he told her to turn around and kneel on the floor. Samantha was being robbed. If only this was the end of her ordeal. Unfortunately, it was just the beginning. The man leaned into the kiosk window and tied Samantha's wrists together. Then once she was bound, the man climbed in through the same window, closing it behind him. He picked Samantha up to her feet, jammed the gun in her lower back, and he escorted her out of the employee door and across the parking lot towards his white pickup truck. At this point, Samantha knew that this robbery was turning into an abduction, so she tried to escape from the man but was quickly subdued and told that if she tried that again, he would not hesitate to kill her. He bundled her into the vehicle and they drove around town for a few hours. He would calmly explain to Samantha that everything will be okay and that she was being abducted for a ransom. Samantha would explain to him that her family didn't have any money for that type of thing and that he would just be better off letting her go. He simply told her, "Don't worry, I'm sure they'll come up with the cash." Later that night, Samantha's boyfriend Dwayne would turn up to the kiosk to collect her and give her a ride home, but he was surprised to see that it was in darkness and it looked like she had finished her shift already. See, they had a wee fight earlier that day and he was worried that maybe she was still angry with him and decided to just get a ride home from her father. Confused and back in his truck, he sent a text message to Sam, to which, after several minutes there was no reply. He decided to drive to her house, just to make sure that she was at least home and safe. A short time later, he arrived at Samantha's home address, where he would speak to Sam's father, James. He would explain the situation, and he's simply checking to make sure she got home okay. But James would tell him that in fact, she wasn't home, and that he hadn't seen or spoken to her. Both men, clearly worried now, proceeded inside and sat in the kitchen and continued to call and text Samantha's phone, which was just ringing out. A short time later, Dwayne's phone would get a text from her, saying that she's still fairly angry with him and that she just needs some time to think about things and that she would be spending a few days with friends. She also asked him to let her father know this also. Dwayne then handed the phone to James to show him the text, James immediately knew that something just wasn't right. It was very uncharacteristic of Samantha to behave in this way. He was very close with his daughter and they had a good relationship, so why wouldn't she respond to his many texts or even answer the phone to him to explain what's going on and why she would be gone for a few days? After staying up all night and trying to get more information from Samantha, continually calling and texting, all with negative results, James decided to go to the Anchorage Police Department and file a missing persons report. As police took the missing persons report, one of the first things they did was to contact the owner of the Common Grounds coffee stand to see if they could shed some light on Sam's whereabouts. The owner told police that they had literally just spoke to the barista that started the morning shift there, and it seems like there was some sort of robbery last night, as the doors were left unlocked as well as the cash register being left unlocked and all the money was gone. She assured police that she was in the process of reviewing the CCTV footage from the previous night and it would be made available to them as soon as she had it. The police also reached out to all of Sam's friends, who also said that they hadn't heard from her or spoken to her. At first glance, it kind of looked like Samantha had taken the money and just took off, which made no sense to her boss or to the police because she had no vehicle. And in Anchorage, it's not the type of place where you can just walk any great distance. Police decided to attend the coffee kiosk to get a wee look around and view the CCTV footage at the location. The police noticed that there were no signs of struggle, and under the counter there was also a panic button which clearly had not been pressed. However, after having watched the CCTV footage for themselves, it soon became apparent that Samantha did not do this, and in fact, this was way more serious. It was now an abduction case. A short time later, the FBI had been called in to assist with the investigation. However, they would continually hit a dead end as there was simply no evidence to go on, and the CCTV footage itself was grainy and they couldn't even get an ID on the man responsible. James, Samantha's father, would reach out to the residents of Anchorage in order to garner assistance in the search for his daughter. The response was so overwhelming that soon the media got involved. On February 24th, so over 3 weeks after Samantha's disappearance, Dwayne would receive a text message from Sam's phone instructing him to go to a local park. The text message read, "Connor Park, sign under pick of Albert. Ain't she purdy?" Dwayne immediately alerted James and the police to this text message, and everyone involved rushed to Connor Park, with Dwayne and James getting there slightly ahead of the FBI. Once there, they found a bulletin board, and attached to it was a clear Ziploc bag with a ransom note and a Xeroxed photo of Samantha. In the photo, Samantha can be seen staring off into space. She wasn't looking straight at the camera. In fact, she looked almost dazed. To the side of Samantha, there was a man's hand holding up a newspaper of the Anchorage Daily News dated the 13th of February. This was a proof of life photo to demonstrate that Samantha was alive as of that date. Of course, James and Dwayne were relieved to know that Samantha was still alive, or at least from that date shown in the newspaper. Obviously this is a rubbish scenario to be in, but they had a wee bit of renewed hope that they could still get her back. The note attached to the photograph demanded that James deposit $30,000 into Samantha's bank account immediately, and then he would release her 6 months later. On the advice of the FBI, James deposited a portion of the ransom into Samantha's account because the feds knew that as soon as the account was accessed, they would be able to immediately track it and swoop in to get the kidnapper. Over the next few days, as predicted, there were several attempts to withdraw money from the account. However, when the FBI would be notified of this and then swiftly converge at the ATM, the perpetrator was long gone, and when they pulled the CCTV footage from the ATM cameras, all they would see is a male wearing a mask, a hood and large sunglasses. So they were no further forward in identifying this guy. Over the next week, the account would show no attempted transactions, and there would be no contact from the kidnapper or Samantha. Then, on March 7th, there were 3 more withdrawals made, this time in Arizona, New Mexico and Texas, and just like before, by the time authorities got there, he was gone, and the CCTV would show the same covered face. However, they would get a wee break in the case when they were reviewing the footage from the ATM in Texas. They saw the masked man walking away from the bank machine and entering a white Ford Focus. He could be seen heading east onto a Texas highway, and subsequently an APB was issued to all Texas law enforcement to look out for this vehicle. On the 13th of March, an eagle-eyed Texas patrol officer spotted the white Focus in the car park of a motel there, and shortly after witnessed a man in his 30s getting into the car. The cop decided to follow him for a bit and waited for any reason to pull the car over. A short time later, he was recorded driving over the speed limit, and this gave the police officer probable cause to pull the car over just outside of the Cotton Patch Cafe in Lufkin, Texas. He approached the driver's window and identified himself. The driver of the car was calm and cooperative. When asked for his license, he obliged and handed the patrolman his driver's license. His name was Israel Keyes. He was 34 years old and lived in Anchorage, Alaska. At that moment, the police officer knew that this was the suspect they were looking for. He returned his patrol car to check the license, but really, he was calling for backup. A short time later, cops descended on the location and they searched the white Focus. In the trunk, they found a ski mask and items that he was wearing during the ATM withdrawals. They also found a gun, Samantha's cell phone, and her debit card. Israel Keyes was arrested. Of course, he denied it all. He claimed that he didn't know anything about Samantha or the ransom. Once he was in police custody, inside the interrogation room, he eventually caved and admitted that he was the culprit they were looking for. He promised to tell them exactly what happened to Samantha on 3 conditions. He wanted an Americano coffee, a cigar, and a Snickers bar. The police obliged and looked to the unassuming man across the desk to tell them what happened. Tell them he would. He told them that on the 1st of February he had planned to rob the Common Grounds coffee kiosk, and simply assumed that some young teenager would be working there. Although he was right, his plans suddenly changed. During the robbery, Keyes had decided that as well as taking the money, he would take Sam also. Once he had climbed through the kiosk window, he packed napkins into her mouth to silence her and then walked her back to his pickup truck. Once inside, he would remove her gag and tell her that if she didn't cooperate, that he would kill her and that this was a kidnap for ransom type of scenario. He then took her phone from her and sent those texts to her boyfriend, saying that she was going to need space for a few days. After a few hours of driving around Anchorage, Keyes would drive back to his house around midnight, and once in the driveway he took Samantha and forced her down into the footwell of the back seat and covered her up, reminding her that if she made any noise or tried to escape, that he would certainly kill her. He then got out of the truck and went into his house because his girlfriend and 10-year-old daughter were inside. They were fast asleep. In just a few hours, Keyes and his daughter were due to leave for New Orleans, where they would meet a cruise ship as they were going on a 2-week-long luxury cruise holiday. After making sure that his family was asleep, he returned to the pickup truck in his driveway. He blindfolded Samantha and led her up the driveway to his garden shed. Once inside, he sat her on an upturned bucket, removed her blindfold and looped a rope around her neck. He then took each end of the rope and anchored it to the wall so that she was effectively pinned to the wall with a makeshift collar. He would tell the FBI that she was very obedient at this point, and he reassured her that all would be okay. She will be free as soon as her father paid the ransom money. He turned on a space heater there to keep the area warm. He also turned on the radio and cranked up the volume just in case she decided to make a noise. He then returned to the house, and after checking on his family once more, he would smoke a cigar and have a glass of wine. A short time later, he returned to Samantha with a glass of water. He would go on to tell the officers that she remained composed, and although frightened, she stayed calm for the most part. After taking a drink of the water, she asked Keyes if he had spoken to her father, to which he said he just did. He told her, "Yes, I've already spoken to him. He said that he'll get the ransom money. When he does, this will all be over and you can go home." He then cut off Samantha's zip ties that had bound her wrists. He unhooked the horrible rope collar from around her neck and allowed her to relax for a moment. Then, quick as a flash, he violently grabbed her again by the wrists and bound her with the rope, this time much more firm and aggressively. See, this was nothing more than a game, a psychological kick for Keyes. He would go on to tell the FBI that he had only done this just to see how she would react. He just wanted to see what she would do when she thought that he would let her go and that freedom was still a reality for her. The reality was he was never going to let her go. There was no ransom. There was no conversation with her father. In fact, the ransom was nothing more than another part of his sick and twisted game. He told investigators that as he was tying her up the second time, that he could tell on her face that she was resigned to what was about to take place. He then left the shed one more time to make sure his daughter and girlfriend were still asleep. He then returned to Samantha, where he immediately began to assault her. Once he was done and putting on his clothes, she looked up at him and very stoically asked, "Are you going to kill me?" Keyes simply smiled back at her and said, "Yes." As he was putting on a pair of leather gloves, she made attempts to talk him out of it, but he would say that there was no other way. Keyes would go on to tell investigators that he was very impressed by her bravery. Shortly before 4 a.m, Israel Keyes took a large kitchen knife and drove it into the back of Samantha before choking her to death. Keyes told the FBI that she never made a sound. After he was done, he returned to the house and took a shower. He then woke up his 10-year-old daughter to tell her to get ready for their holidays. Once his daughter was up and getting ready, he returned to the shed where he rolled Samantha's body up in a tarp and pushed her to one side. He then turned off the space heater and the radio, double locked his shed and returned to the house where he would have breakfast with his daughter. Around 5 a.m. that morning, a cab arrived outside the Keyes residence and him and his daughter would go to the airport where they would fly to New Orleans and onto a cruise ship where they would take a 2-week-long vacation. But wait, we're forgetting about an important part of this case. What about the proof of life photo? See, after Keyes returned from his 2-week vacation, he returned back to the shed and unrolled Samantha from the tarp. He would tell investigators that she still looked fairly lively. He would put clothes on her, he would comb her hair, and then he would sit her upright and stitch her eyes open so that she looked alive and alert. He then held a copy of the newspaper in front of her and took the photo. By all means, feel free to Google the photo in question, but fair warning, it's distressing. After he was done, he would dismember Samantha's body and discard her remains in a nearby frozen lake. This was not Israel Keyes' first victim. In fact, Israel Keyes was a serial killer. His common practice was to construct kill kits. These were packages that he had assembled and would bury in various locations throughout the country. This way, if the urge to kill ever took his fancy, he would just need to go to the location and retrieve the kill kit and he was ready to go. One of the many aspects of Israel Keyes that made him dangerous was the fact that he did not discriminate. He didn't care if you were male or female, old or young. Once he decided to target you, that was that. His only motive was the enjoyment of watching people die. He would tell the FBI during this interview that the second he saw Samantha at that kiosk, he knew he had to kill her. The robbery and the story of the ransom was all simply to keep Samantha in line. He was never going to let her live. Keyes targeted random people all across the United States to avoid detection with months of planning before he committed a particular crime. He would specifically go to campgrounds or isolated locations. He claimed to only use guns when he had to and preferred strangulation. This was due to the pleasure that he derived from witnessing victims lose consciousness in the struggle. He claimed to not kill children or parents of children, primarily because of his daughter, whom he feared finding out about him and his secret. However, police and FBI investigators were sceptical of this claim and suspected that Keyes was guilty of killing several teens or children. He grew up in Colville, Washington, and it's believed that he first killed there as a teenager between 1996 and 1998. See, 2 teen girls were killed in 2 separate incidents, along with one of the girls' mothers. He soon joined the military in 1998, and after short tours in various locations, including Egypt, he was discharged in 2001. He did not admit to any murders during his 3 years in the United States Army, but he did admit to twice attempting the rapes of women, once when he was stationed in Egypt, and another time when he was on leave in Israel. He is believed to have resumed his killing spree in 2001 following his discharge from the army. Keyes admitted to investigators that he killed 4 people in Washington state. Keys is a suspect in a series of 2007 crimes by the Boca killer near Boca Raton in Florida. In 3 cases, a mother and child were kidnapped from a shopping mall. In 2 of those cases, the mother and child were shot and killed and their bodies were abandoned in their vehicles. In the 3rd case, the mother and child were released unharmed after several hours. Though the kidnapper wore a mask and glasses, the surviving victim caught glimpses of his face and described him as being tall, athletically built man with long hair and generally matching Keys' description. Keys confessed to at least 1 murder in New York State in late 2012. Authorities had not determined the identity, age or sex of the victim, or when and where the murder may have occurred, but regarded the confession as credible. He had ties to New York. He owned 10 acres of land there and a dilapidated cabin in the town of Constable. He also confessed to committing bank robberies in New York and in Texas. The FBI later confirmed that Keys robbed the Community Bank branch in Tupper Lake, New York in April of 2009. He also told authorities that he burgled a Texas home and set it on fire. He's also suspected of having murdered a woman, believed to be Deborah Feldman, in April 2009 in New Jersey and buried her near Tupper Lake, New York. He also admitted to murdering Bill and Lorraine Currier of Essex in Vermont. Keys broke into the Currier home on the night of June 8, 2011. He tied them up before driving them to an abandoned farmhouse where he shot Bill before sexually assaulting and strangling Lorraine. Their bodies have never been found. An FBI report stated that Keys burgled 20 to 30 homes across the US and robbed several banks between 2001 and 2012. He may be linked to as many as 11 deaths in the United States and potentially even more victims outside of the country. Keys planned murders long ahead of time and took extraordinary action to avoid detection. See, unlike most serial killers, he didn't have a victim profile. He just chose his victims randomly. He usually killed far from home and never in the same place twice. On his murder trips, he kept his mobile phone turned off and paid for items in cash. He had no connection to any of his own victims. For the Currier murders, Keys flew to Chicago, where he rented a car to drive 1,000 miles to Vermont. He then used the kill kit that he had hidden 2 years earlier to perform those murders. On the 2nd of December 2012, whilst in his prison cell, Keys would take his own life. In 2020, the FBI released a photo of drawings that Keys had made whilst he was in prison. Drawings that they believe represent at least 11 of his victims. Listen folks, this one was particularly gruesome, and I thank you ever so much for spending the time with me today. If you've gotten this far and you've not clicked off yet, please feel free to leave a wee comment to say hello and tell me your thoughts on this case. Stay safe out there please, and as always, keep smiling.